Can I tell you something embarrassing?
Always.
Last week, a tourist walked up to me, very friendly, big smile, and she said, "Hey, do you know where the waterfall is?"
And you know exactly where the waterfall is.
I have lived next to that waterfall my entire life. I know every rock, every tree, every sound it makes in different seasons. I could write an essay about that waterfall.
So what happened?
She spoke fast. She had an accent I wasn't used to, and something in my brain just stopped. I opened my mouth, nothing came out. She waited, I said nothing. She smiled awkwardly and walked away.
Oh no!
She walked in completely the wrong direction, by the way. I watched her go, and I thought, I know 14 different uses of the word get. I have studied English grammar for years, and I just stood there like a statue while someone asked me about a waterfall I can see from where I sleep.
Welcome back to the Primate Podcast, your slow English podcast for real-life conversations. I'm Zara.
I'm Bob, and today we are talking about one of the most frustrating feelings in English learning.
You study, you practice, you know the grammar, you understand when you listen, and then a real conversation happens and everything disappears.
Your mind goes blank. Your mouth stops working. The words that were there a second ago are suddenly gone.
This is a Bone to B2 episode. But honestly, if you have ever frozen in a real English conversation, this is for you, whatever your level.
Before we start, comment below. Has this ever happened to you? You knew the answer, you knew the words, but you froze anyway. Write yes, and tell us the situation if you want. We read everything.
Okay, Bob, tell me more about that tourist.
So, the thing that gets me is I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared of her. She was perfectly friendly. There was no pressure, and still nothing.
And this is actually very important because a lot of people think the problem is confidence or fear, but sometimes it's something different.
Yes, I wasn't afraid. I was just offline, like a computer that has all the files but suddenly can't find them.
That is actually a perfect description, and I think so many learners are in exactly this situation. They have the knowledge, the grammar is there, the vocabulary is there, but in the moment of a real conversation, the system crashes.
And you're left standing there thinking, where did my English go?
So today we want to talk about why this happens. Not in a vague, just practice more way, but actually what is going on inside the brain when this happens and what you can do about it.
Because knowing why something happens is the first step to changing it.
And before we go deeper, let's name what we're talking about. That moment when your English disappears in a real conversation. It has a name. It's called the knowing-doing gap. You know the English, but you can't do it in the moment. The knowing and the doing are two completely separate skills.
Two separate skills. That's the key idea today. Say it again.
Knowing English and using English in real time, these are two completely different skills, and most people only train one of them.
Okay, so let's talk about why this happens, because I think there are a few very specific reasons, and when I understood them, things started to make more sense.
First reason, and this one is very uncomfortable to hear.
Go ahead.
Most English learning happens in conditions that don't exist in real conversations. You study from a book. The book waits for you. You listen to a podcast. You can pause, rewind, replay. You do an exercise. You have time to think. Nobody is looking at you. There is no pressure. There is no clock.
But a real conversation doesn't wait.
A real conversation doesn't wait. It moves. It has rhythm. It has pauses in specific places, and if you miss the moment is gone.
So we train in slow motion, and then we try to perform at full speed.
Exactly. Imagine you practice swimming by reading about swimming. You read every book. You know the theory perfectly. and then someone throws you into the water. The knowledge is there, but the body doesn't know what to do yet.
That is painfully accurate, and a little scary as a metaphor.
English conversation is the water, and most learners spend almost all their time on the shore.
Second reason, and this one I find fascinating.
Tell me.
When you are in a real conversation, your brain is doing too many things at the same time. It is listening, it is understanding, it is thinking of what to say, it is constructing the sentence, it is monitoring your pronunciation, it is watching the other person's face for reactions, it is managing the social pressure of the situation.
That is an enormous amount of work.
It is exhausting. And when the brain is overloaded, it starts dropping tasks. And the first thing it drops is usually production, speaking, because listening feels more urgent.
So you understand perfectly, but you can't produce anything back because your brain made a choice and it chose to listen over speaking.
Which is why people often say, I understand everything, but I can't speak. It's not a mystery. It's the brain prioritizing survival over performance.
And that word, overloaded, is important here. Your brain becomes overloaded in real conversation because it hasn't automated the basic parts yet. When something is automated, it doesn't take mental energy. It just happens. Like breathing. You don't think about breathing. It's automatic. But English, for most learners, is not automatic yet. Every word still costs something. Every sentence still requires effort. And in a fast conversation, you run out of mental budget very quickly.
Mental budget. I love that phrase.
Third reason, and this one is the most honest.
What's that?
Most learners practice the wrong kind of English. They study the English that is used in writing, in textbooks, in formal situations. But real spoken English is completely different.
How different?
Real spoken English is faster. It uses contractions constantly. I'm, he's, Dave, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't. It drops sounds. What are you doing becomes what are you doing. I don't know becomes dunno. Going to becomes gonna. Want to becomes wanna.
And if you have only ever heard the clean textbook version, the real version sounds like a completely different language.
Exactly. The tourist who asked me about the waterfall didn't say, "Excuse me, do you know where the waterfall is located?" She said, "Hey, do you know where the waterfall's at?"
And my brain heard that and thought, waterfall? At? No? And by the time it had decoded everything, she was already waiting for an answer.
So the gap is not just about speaking. It's about the gap between the English you studied and the English that actually exists in real conversations.
Okay, now I want to talk about something that I think is the real enemy here. And it's not grammar. It's not vocabulary.
What is it?
Translation. The habit of translating in your head before you speak.
Oh, yes, this one is huge.
Because here is what happens. You hear a question in English, your brain translates it into your native language, you think of the answer in your native language, you translate the answer into English, you check the grammar, and then, maybe, you say something.
By which point, the conversation has moved 3 steps forward.
And you are standing there with a perfectly correct sentence that is now completely irrelevant.
The most grammatically accurate thing nobody needed to hear.
Exactly. And the problem with translation is not just that it's slow, it's that it creates a bottleneck. Every single thing you want to say has to go through this translation process. And the translation process is slow, effortful, and unreliable under pressure.
So, what's the alternative?
Thinking in English. Not translating from your language into English, but actually thinking in English from the start.
Which sounds simple and is actually one of the hardest things to develop. Because your brain has a very strong habit. It has been thinking in your native language since you were born. That habit is not going to disappear just because you want it to.
So, how do you actually change it?
Slowly and deliberately. You start small. You pick one part of your day and you think in English during that part. Not the whole day, not all your thoughts, just one situation.
Like what?
Like your morning routine. When you make coffee, you think in English, not translate your thoughts. Think, I need water. The cup is warm. This smells good. Short thoughts, simple thoughts. You are not writing a novel. You are just practicing the habit of English thought.
And over time, that habit grows, and the translation step starts to shrink. And eventually, for some things, it disappears entirely.
And when the translation step disappears, your speaking speed increases, your fluency increases, because the bottleneck is gone.
I started doing this about a year ago, just with simple observations. That cloud looks heavy. Those tourists are loud. This banana is perfect. And it felt completely ridiculous at first.
Did it help?
It helped enormously, because now when a tourist speaks to me, my first instinct is to respond in English, not to translate. The English is already there, closer to the surface.
Okay, now let's talk about what to actually do. Because understanding the problem is one thing, but you need tools.
Practical things. Real things.
First thing, and we have said this before, but it is worth repeating. Consume real spoken English, not just textbook English, not just slow, clear classroom English.
Real conversations, films, podcasts where people actually interrupt each other and use contractions and speak at normal speed.
Because your ear needs to become familiar with the real version of the language, not just the clean version, the messy, fast, contracted, natural version. And when your ear is familiar with it, your brain stops panicking when it hears it.
It stops treating normal speech like an emergency.
Exactly. Right now, for many learners, real fast English triggers a kind of alarm. The brain thinks, I don't recognize this. Something is wrong. And that alarm uses mental energy that should be going to speaking.
So, the more you expose yourself to real spoken English, the quieter that alarm gets.
Second thing, practice retrieval, not just recognition.
Explain the difference.
Recognition is when you see a word and you know what it means. Retrieval is when you need to produce the word from nothing, from your own memory, under pressure, in real time. Most studying only trains recognition. You read something, you understand it. You hear something, you understand it. But understanding is passive. Speaking requires retrieval, and retrieval is a completely different muscle.
So, how do you train retrieval?
Even alone, you look at an object and you describe it in English without looking anything up. You tell a story out loud in English without writing it first. You answer questions out loud, questions you ask yourself. What did I do today? What am I thinking about? What would I do if I had a free day?
These feel like exercises for a very strange fitness class.
They are, but they work. Because every time you retrieve a word from your own memory, you make that word easier to retrieve next time. You are building the pathways. The faster the pathway, the faster the word comes in a real conversation.
Third thing, and this one changed my experience of real conversations completely.
What's that?
Stop trying to say the perfect thing. Start trying to say the useful thing.
More.
When I froze with that tourist at the waterfall, I wasn't frozen because I didn't know any words. I was frozen because I was searching for the perfect sentence. The complete, correct, natural-sounding, impressive sentence. And while I was searching for that, time ran out.
And a simple sentence would have been enough.
A simple sentence would have been perfect. Go left, 5 minutes, you'll hear it. 12 words, no grammar required. She would have found the waterfall. The conversation would have been a success.
This is one of the biggest mindset shifts in language learning, moving from I need to say this correctly to I need to communicate this effectively. These are not the same goal, and chasing correctness in a real conversation is one of the fastest ways to freeze.
Because correctness requires your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is too slow for real conversation. Real conversation requires your automatic mind, and your automatic mind only activates when you let go of the need to be perfect.
And this is something worth sitting with. The very thing you are trying to do, speak correctly, is the thing that stops you from speaking at all. Perfectionism in conversation is not a virtue. It is a trap.
Fourth thing, learn chunks, not just words.
This is so important and so underused.
Most people learn vocabulary as individual words: table, chair, speak, think, and then they try to combine these words into sentences in real time. But that is very hard under pressure.
Native speakers don't think in individual words. They think in chunks, ready-made pieces of language that they don't have to construct. They just retrieve the whole piece.
For example?
That's a good point. I'm not sure about that. Let me think about it. What do you mean? Can you say that again? I was going to say, the thing is, to be honest.
And because they are stored as complete pieces, they come out fast, without conscious construction.
Exactly. And when your brain has enough chunks, a real conversation stops being a construction project. It becomes more like assembly. You are putting together pieces you already have, not building from scratch every time.
And assembly is much faster than construction.
So the practical advice is, when you learn English, don't just collect words. Collect phrases. Collect chunks. Learn how words live together in real sentences, not just what they mean in isolation.
Fifth thing, and this one is the hardest to accept.
What's that?
You have to have more real conversations. There is no way around it. You cannot read your way to fluency. You cannot study your way to fluency. At some point, you have to be in the water.
And I know this sounds obvious, but the reason people don't do it is not laziness. It's that real conversations are uncomfortable when you're not ready, and the discomfort feels like a signal that you're not prepared enough yet.
But the discomfort is the training. The discomfort is not a sign that you need more study. It's a sign that you are exercising a muscle that needs exercise.
Avoiding real conversations because they're uncomfortable is like avoiding the gym because lifting weights is hard. The difficulty is the point. The difficulty is what creates the growth.
And every real conversation, even a bad one, even a frozen one, even one where you say something wrong, teaches your brain something that no book ever can. It teaches your brain what real English feels like from the inside.
And slowly, conversation by conversation, the freezing happens less, the blanks happen less. The words come faster, not because you studied more, because you spoke more.
And speaking more is the only path there is.
Okay, and before we go to the word tour, I want to say one more thing because I think it's important.
Go ahead.
If you have ever frozen in a real English conversation, you are not broken. You are not bad at English. You are not less intelligent. You are simply someone who has trained one skill, understanding, and now needs to train the other skill, producing. That's it. It's not a character flaw. It's a training gap.
And training gaps close with training, not with shame, not with more grammar study, with practice, with real use, with showing up even when it's uncomfortable.
The tourist at the waterfall is going to come back eventually.
They always do.
And next time, Bob will know what to say.
Next time, I am going to give the most detailed waterfall directions anyone has ever received.
Okay, word tour. Let's go. 10 words from today. Bob reads slowly and clearly. Everyone repeat out loud or whisper, but say the words.
Ready, let's go. Fluency. Fluency. The ability to speak a language naturally, smoothly, and automatically without stopping to think about every word. Fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being automatic. She developed fluency by speaking every day, not by studying more grammar. Repeat. Fluency. Fluency. 2. Retrieval. Retrieve-ul. The act of finding and producing information from your own memory without help. Speaking requires retrieval, not just recognition. Practicing retrieval means producing words from memory, not just recognizing them when you see them. Repeat. Retrieval. Retrieval. 3. Overloaded. Overloaded. Having too much to process at the same time, more than the brain can handle. In a fast conversation, the brain gets overloaded and stops producing language. When you're overloaded, your speaking shuts down before your listening does. Repeat. Overloaded. Overloaded. 4. Automate. Automate. To make something so practiced that it happens without conscious effort, like breathing or walking. The goal of language practice is to automate the basics so your brain has energy for the harder parts. When grammar becomes automated, you stop thinking about it and start just using it. Repeat. Automate. Automate. 5. Chunk. Chunk. A ready-made piece of language that is stored and used as a complete unit, not built word by word. Learning English in chunks is faster than learning individual words. Native speakers think in chunks, not in isolated words. Repeat. Chunk. Chunk. 6. Gap. Gap. A space between two things. In language learning, the space between what you know and what you can do. There is a gap between knowing grammar and using it in real conversation. The knowing-doing gap is one of the most common problems for English learners. Repeat. Gap. Gap. 7. Bottleneck. Bottleneck. A point where something gets slowed down or blocked, like the narrow part of a bottle. Translation in your head creates a bottleneck in real conversation. When one part of the process is slow, it creates a bottleneck that affects everything else. Repeat. Bottleneck. Bottleneck. 8. Spontaneous. Spontaneous. Happening naturally without planning or preparation, in the moment. Real conversation requires spontaneous language, not prepared sentences. The more you practice, the more spontaneous your English becomes. Repeat. Spontaneous. Spontaneous. 9. Exposure. Exposure. The amount of time you spend in contact with real English, listening, reading, experiencing it. More exposure to real spoken English helps your brain recognize natural speech patterns. Exposure alone is not enough. You need to also practice producing language. Repeat. Exposure. Exposure. 10. Activate. Activate. To make something start working. To switch it on and put it into use. Real conversations activate the part of your English that passive study cannot reach. You have to activate your English by using it, not just by studying it. Repeat.
Activate. Activate.
10 words, 10 ideas, all from one real conversation. Repeat them tonight. Let them sink in, and then go and use one of them somewhere.
Okay, episode 7, done.
We talked about why real conversations feel different from studying, why the brain freezes, why translation slows everything down, and what you can actually do about it.
The knowing-doing gap is real, but it closes with real practice, with real conversations, with the willingness to be imperfect in public.
Don't forget, comment below. Has this ever happened to you? You knew the words, you knew the answer, but you froze anyway?
Tell us the situation. We want to know, and we read everything.
Subscribe to the Primate podcast. New episodes every 2 days. From the jungle, I'm Zara.
I'm Bob. Don't be a parrot. Parrots repeat. Primates understand.